I know this isn't enough time to have been able to really discuss that, but I just wanted to have you guys think through it, and I wanted to kind of see. So what are some examples that you have of a discipleship pathway? Are there any good examples that you've got? Okay.
It's yours, I think.
I can share out, I guess. So something we talk about a lot in my church is an acronym called BLESS, and I've found it really helpful. And it's basically the idea of spending time with people and having some intentionality behind that. So the first B is actually stands for bless. How can I bless someone? L, listen. Listening to people where they're at. E, eating, so sharing food together, sharing a meal. S, speak. What do I need to speak? Is God calling me to say something? Help. And then the final one, Sabbath. Kind of, what can I do for fun, for recreation, alongside someone to kind of develop a relationship with them?
So those rhythms we've tried to build into our culture as a church, so that instead of saying programs, how do we build in some of these kind of rhythms? And that's been fruitful because it gives people a context in every day. Because I can connect with believers over those 5 things. Who should I have lunch with? Oh, well, let me sit down with Steve, because that'll be encouraging. But it can also be a chance to connect with other people who haven't met Jesus yet. And we also build that in that, am I going to spend time with God the same way? Can I have those same rhythms? How do I bless God? How do I listen to God? So we can work through all those. Let me give you a couple examples of what we're thinking about when we talk about these discipleship pathways. Some of the ones that will be helpful, but some of those questions. How clear is your discipleship pathway? Is it actually written? If it is written, do people know it? Man, these are really hard for us in ministry because it never comes back looking good for us. You ask your people, hey, so do you know what our discipleship pathway is? Like, no, we have no idea. You're like, oh, it's like asking your kids, right? You're not probably going to get a really good answer. It's going to make you look good when you say this. But it's important. Is it memorable? And is it actually helpful? So let me give you a couple of examples of some. This study that JP did with Sun Life called The 4 Chairs, and again, New England Bible College brought JP up here this last year to walk through this. This one I found to be tremendously helpful for our people. So we talk about that a lot, where the first chair, literally picture 4 chairs. I do this with my hockey players. Like, okay, I lay these 4 chairs next to each other. The first chair is come and see. At that point, spiritually, come and see. Am I just here to find out who Jesus is? I'm not a follower of Jesus yet. I'm just here to find out who he is. I'm exploring. That's the first stage of discipleship. We make room for discipleship to be people before they come to know Jesus. The second one is come and follow. That's when we take that next step and we go, okay, I know who Jesus is now, and I believe in Jesus. I follow Jesus. I don't know everything about him. I got to learn how to clean my life. I need to learn how to feed myself. I need to learn how to grow. I need to learn a whole bunch of stuff. But I'm in that plan A. Jesus is my plan A. So the difference between come and see and come and follow is big. But I sit there with my hockey players. I'm like, well, which chair are you in? Often, what do they say? Somewhere in between. You can't be somewhere in between, but it helps me draw that out for them. What's the next one? For us, we use the term come and die. Because when you get to that point of discipleship, it's about you laying your life down. And unless a seed goes into the ground, it's not going to grow up. In the same way, Jesus did that, but you and I are supposed to do it. I am not supposed to come to my church to say, hey, what all can you do for me? I am supposed to come to my family, my faith family, and I'm supposed to say, let me lay my life down for others. Then we have, so come and see, come and follow, come and die, and then go and bear fruit. That's our fourth, go and bear fruit. In other words, I now start working with others who are learning how to do this. Now, It's important. We don't see that as 4 sequential steps, that we see it as a spiral, because I need to keep living out what it means to come and follow every day. I need to keep following out what it means to come and die, even when I'm at the point where I'm leading a group of disciple-making disciplers. So those are 4 steps for us. That helps my people know where they are in their process. Norm?
I just wanted to ask you, as far as the first one.
Yeah.
How does the people that are still learning about Jesus is that the come and see, the come doesn't imply to come to my church, right?
Correct, great. Norm is the secret sauce around here for discipleship. He is the guy who is just so great at this, and he's such a blessing to us as a church and has lived this out for such a long, consistent time. I love referring people to him because he does this. But it is not necessarily come to my church gathering. Because we realize that most people in Maine, when they are coming to Jesus, or even when they've come to Jesus, they may not come to my church building. My house is the front door of the church. I've got to sacrifice my life, my time, all these things. That's why this young man's living with us right now. Because this is his entrance into the church. He wants to actually come in the doors, but that's really weird. Most people in our area do not want to come to church. They're not ready for that yet. And I'm actually going to argue that makes room for that inside of a disciple-making movement. But that's a great point, Norm. It's not necessarily come hear Mark talk on a Sunday, because you'll probably be bored. You probably won't understand the songs that we're singing. You may not get these things. Maybe you do. Maybe you fit right in. Dale walked in the back doors one day with a group of his friends, and he never left. Well, a couple times he did back and forth, right? Because it was hard to get used to being in a church. Right, I totally forgive him, man. I love you, and I told you you'd be back. So God wasn't going to let you go. But there's a lot of other people who are not ready for that yet. So you're right, Norm. Come and see does not mean come to my church. It means let me help you discover who Jesus is from the Word. And we'll do that wherever, however we need to do it. Here's another example. Some people use a life cycle as their pathway that they communicate with people. So you think about like a newborn. That's the first cycle, right? Preborn or newborn. They haven't even been born yet, but what do you need to do when you think through the life cycle of a person when they're pregnant, when they've got this growing life inside of them? What kind of things do they need? So that's sort of an image. Where am I? I haven't even been born yet. The next stage then would be a toddler. Toddlers are not the people who are really good at taking care of all the people around them, are they? What does a toddler or newborn do? They just need everybody to help take care of them. Now that's where church is really valuable, right? Because there are times where people need us to take care of them. We need to help them learn how to feed themselves. We need to learn how to help them clean themselves. We need to learn how to help them to learn to listen. We need to do all these things with them. So that toddler stage is really important. The next stage then, though, becomes the adolescent. And we know that adolescence today extends from being a teenager all the way up to your mid-20s. But what's supposed to change in that time frame? Well, during that time frame, I'm supposed to start to care about other people. I'm supposed to not just have mom make my dinner, but I should learn how to make dinner. I'm not supposed to just have stuff, throw it in the trash. Guess what? Dad tells me to take out the trash. I begin to serve. I begin to live and connect with other people. I start to develop better relationships with people. So for a discipleship pathway, you can use this image of being a preborn, and then being a toddler, and then being an adolescent, and then you can be an adult. And what would an adult do? An adult begins to say, hey, let me take care of all the other people around me, and even to the point when they become a parent, right? Because what does a parent do? They take care of their kids. The focus is no longer on where do I want to go on vacation. The focus is on what? Where do my kids want to go on vacation? What do my kids want to eat? How do I help them? We move to that, and then we move on to that next stage. That fifth stage is almost that grandparent or empty nester when you sit there and go, hey, I can now have different people in my house. I can now begin to help my kids who are helping their kids, because that's the natural path of a disciple. So that would be another discipleship pathway that you could use with your children.
And here's a resource. It's called Real Life Discipleship by Bobby Hannington.
Okay.
Here-
Does that use
here-
that?
Yeah, he really has a great chart on that.
Okay, so real life discipleship. I was trying to look for one. I couldn't find one. I knew I'd heard one. So that would be another really good one that we could use. Do we communicate these kind of things? You guys might remember Rick Warren. He had a base path, okay, and it was first base, second base, third base, home base, that's a discipleship pathway. The whole goal of a discipleship pathway is just to say, hey, I want you to understand where you are, and I want to help you understand where you should be going. Ultimately, Jesus has called us to make disciples who make disciples who make disciples who make disciples. So I want to ask this question. What do you think gets in the way? I don't think anybody sits there and goes, hey, biblically, I don't think that's right. Every guy I know sits there and says, hey, this is exactly what we're supposed to do. I sat with an older pastor the other day who's kind of wrapping up his ministry years. And he said, you know what, I'm just not really good at this. I'm really good at teaching. I'm really good at these kind of things. He says, in fact, the first ministry I went to, I had this like custom set opportunity to make disciples. They literally had money in a fund to be able to take on interns so they could begin to equip guys to do ministry and go forward in ministry. And he said, I didn't really respect that or understand that or do anything with it. So why would that be? What gets in the way? What do you think?
Well, I think our churches become very institutional, where there's some bare things that we think this has got to be. These are things we have to do as a church. I think some of those don't fit in the schema. They just don't fit in the schema.
Right.
And how in the world do you even talk about throwing out very good things that churches have done for generations because it doesn't fit into this schema? How in the world?
How are we going to make
I don't
hamburger?
have a foot in each world.
How are you going to make hamburger out of sacred cows?
What did you just say?
How are you going to make hamburgers out of sacred cows?
Oh,
You know, because there's some big stuff in there, Mark. You're right. Where we sit there and go, well, church is supposed to be this. There. Oh, who you were pointing at?
Bart had something.
Oh, okay.
Oh, it was just a similar.
Yeah.
It's just like, I'm not a pastor, but I guess as far as this, kind of the things of the world getting away, God, careful with the seeds, like some of them go in, some of them get trampled, right?
Right? Good call, man. The parable of the sower, right? Some of these other things just get in the way. The concerns of everyday life get in the way of this. And we say, I don't have time to make disciples. It gets choked out because of riches, right? We sit there and go, hey, no one's going to recognize how incredibly successful or valuable or smart I am if I'm sitting down with one person working with them. So these can get in the way. Yeah. Ian.
During this talk, this is actually something that I was thinking about, and it was like, all right, well, I can see two difficulties that I need to personally figure out how to minimize the effect of it taken away from this is how to navigate having a toddler with bedtime, where
Yep.
they could otherwise use for like facilitating people or hanging out with people, and also how to get over feeling like things like I talked to you about my housework. That is something that gets in the way. How do I make that less in the way?
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yep. Right.
Weekend time is set aside as solely this. How do I become selfless to a point where I can still further our family goal, but not to that above discipleship?
So it's going to be not how do I change the world around me, but how do I live differently in this world? Because you're right. If you sit there and go, well, if I make disciples, then nothing's going to happen on my house. And I have to get things done on these projects. But yeah, so these are some of the huge challenges that we definitely got to wrestle with. Alexander?
I have a question for you.
Sure.
How do we safeguard doctrine in a movement? Because every disciple-making movement I've seen and heard of is so ecumenical that there's a bunch of, it's honestly weak doctrine that's going to make weak disciples. And so, like, how do you balance a movement while also safeguarding?
And that's going to be a real tension in this. That's going to be a real tension for us, because how do I safeguard doctrine, but how do I also then trust God to safeguard doctrine? So, I was thinking through something similar to that. We've been preaching through the book of Mark. And in the book of Mark, Jesus goes over to the Gerasenes, and he meets a guy possessed by a demon, right? Not one, thousands. Right, legion. And then Jesus casts out that demon, and how does it change that guy's life? Completely different. He's sitting down in his right mind. And what does he say when Jesus goes to get in the boat? I want to go with you. And what does Jesus say? Jesus says, nope. I am sending you out to these 10 Gentile towns out here. And I want you to tell them everything that I have done for you. I've written it down. I want you to tell them everything that I have done for you and about my great mercy. They leave. What is the total depth of his theological education going into that assignment? He obviously heard some of the stories, because I don't know if you noticed it, but at the end of chapter 6, Jesus goes back to Gerasene, and when he gets there, what happens? Everybody brings all of the people that are hurting and sick or that need healing right to Jesus. And what do they insist on? They say, if I can only touch the hem of his robe, then I'll be healed. Who said that? The woman with the issue of blood. Do you think they came up with that on their own? I think he heard the disciples tell that story about what Jesus had done for her. And with what little he knew, he went out and he just told them what little he knew. So there's a danger. There's a real danger in this. There's a riskiness to this, where you sit there and go, well, how are we going to make sure that we don't end up with something that's completely off the rails? How do we make sure it doesn't end up in being something different? So I think there is a real balance in there, yet it has to prompt that question. If we're going to do a disciple-making movement, will it be risky enough to actually let people do that? Aaron?
Well, that's the role of the shepherd, right? The overseer and elders, right? I mean, to have that oversight.
Yeah.
And when it comes to, if there is divisions coming, to work through that to the point where, sometimes it does, have nothing to do with them, but there's someone in your church causing divisions or whatever.
Yeah.
So, but I get the point.
Yeah.
I think one thing for me in discipleship, I think for a lot of pastors, is discouragement.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can be discipling, and then people just disappear on you, right?
It's costly, man.
Yeah,
It is risky. If we do this, and my first pastor I worked with down in Connecticut, he said, I won't disciple people anymore because it just cost me too much. So I can understand the heart behind that, and yet we've also got to sit there and go, okay, well, I've got to do what Jesus said was the priority in this. So yeah, there's huge discouragement. I remember a couple I worked with, and their marriage had completely fallen apart. By the grace of God, I got to walk with them. And the weirdest things, I gave her a Jesus Storybook Bible. It's a kid's Bible. She sat and read it all in one night and came to Christ. She had grown up going in Catholic school and Catholic church, and all these things, so she had some spiritual background, but she didn't understand any of it. She read this kid's Bible, and she cried through the entire night. She calls her husband, who she separated from at that night, and she calls him and she goes, John, I can't believe what's happened here. She goes, I read through the whole Bible last night. It's the first time it's ever made sense. She goes, they should make something like this for adults. He's like, they do, it's called the Bible. But what happened was their marriage was saved by the grace of God. We know not every story turns out like this, right? But by grace, that one did. Their lives, they're still together today. They love Jesus together today. They're following Jesus together today. You know what our church got from that? 0. Bumpkiss. They didn't, I invited them. We wanted them to come. I invited them to my house. They happened to go up to one of the local Harley dealerships. They met another couple while they were standing there, while they were buying a motorcycle. This other couple goes to, knows Jesus and invites them to go up to East Auburn Baptist Church. Am I upset? Not at all. Because it's not about me. It's not about my bottom line. It is not about enhancing my seating capacity. It's about enhancing our sending capacity. So there are going to be people that we're going to work with, and we're going to have to steel ourselves up because we're going to sit there and go, man, this has cost me more, and I don't know. But what did Jesus say in Mark? He says, it's like a guy who sows seeds, right? He's like a farmer. The farmer plants the seeds, and then what does he do? He goes to bed. He can't do a single thing about it. And where that seed grows up and where that thing grows up, if you are going to disciple people, you're going to have to register that early.
I think one of the things that's really helped me and helped some other people is redefining the scorecard.
Mm-hmm.
And if we don't do that, then we will throw in the towel.
Yeah.
But when I realize that what I'm responsible for is having a pathway and inviting people to enter in and doing my best, as Ephesians 4 says, to put these things for the work of ministry, I can't go to bed and I can't sleep well.
Yeah.
Because I've done all I can do. Right? And at the end of the day, it's on the Holy Spirit and them to engage and move forward.
And I understand the discouragement that comes from it. I've lived it.
Well, and Jesus, as a pastor, all those 40 years, I got a lot of encouragement from Jesus. Every time he'd go to the disciples and go, oy vey, are you a little faith? Or, what you're talking about, when people walk away, John 6, where many turned away, no longer followed him. He understands. He's a
Big,
great shepherd.
thriving ministry suddenly cut down to 12.
Yep.
And it seems he did that intentionally for some reason, which is just blows your mind. John 6.
So
Yeah.
discouragement, we're going to admit, that is a real issue for us in our ministries because we sit there and go, I've invested so much and this person doesn't even seem like they know Jesus anymore.
Can I throw 2 other things out about the pathway? One is
Absolutely.
two weaknesses, not having one.
Yeah.
Most don't have a pathway, whether it's taking that DDP that you had there and thinking through how are we developing people on those lines, or whether it's the Rick Moore baseball diamond or whatever, cake chart, so on. Most don't have one, so that's weakness number 1. We're not thinking through how do we develop people. Or the second is making it too programmatic if we do. Because what Mark has really articulated and modeled is it's about the relationships. A lot of churches will take people through a pathway. This is our 101, our 201, our 301, our 401, but then they're not walking with people through that. That's where it all falls apart.
So discipleship, to be able to do those, right, you're going to have to admit, number 1, it is going to totally mess up my schedule. We do not like that. Because this is my Saturday. And I dealt with this last week. I had dealt with, there's this couple I love dearly, and I'm so excited to see the way they're growing. But all of a sudden, I had already talked to them on Saturday morning, and then Saturday afternoon the phone rings, and I'm like, I just turned on a football game. I don't even care what football game, but I just turned on a football game, and the phone rings. And I got a text message, hey, I just have a quick question. You know there's nothing quick about this. There's never been a quick conversation on these, right? But if we're going to make disciples, it's going to mess up our schedule. The second thing is, it's going to come with a hefty dose of discouragement because I won't be able to quantify what that brings to my table. And it might seem costly or harmful to me. But Jesus did the same, so we're going to have to kind of, again, prepare ourselves. Risk, like Alexander said, is another big one. What if I do this and it goes south. Like, what if my disciple's the guy who takes everybody and gives them the poison Kool-Aid? That gets back to me. I am the one. This is my fault, is what I say to myself. But that's not the truth. But we have to be able to be willing to deal with risk. And, we just mentioned it, but did you ever realize again in Matthew 28, we've been talking about the Great Commission here? What does it say in verse 16? Jesus has lived his entire life ministry. He has brought people back from the dead. He has fed 5,000. He's calmed storms. He has cast out demons, and they've had no choice but to do exactly what he says. He's now given his life for people. He has been buried. He's risen again. For 40 days, he has walked around, and everybody who's known him, 500 people in one place, have seen him alive again after his resurrection. Now he's going to leave, and he's really invested everything he has in these now 11 apostles. He's taught them everything he knows. And what does verse 16 say? Now the 11 disciples went to Galilee, to the mountain to which Jesus directed them. Verse 17, and when they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted. Risky. I mean, after all of that, everybody sits there and goes, man, if I had seen what they had seen, my life would be so different. My problem is I didn't see Jesus do any of these things. They saw all those things, and they still sat there and went, I'm not really sure. And it wasn't until Pentecost, which was the arrival of who? The Holy Spirit. And who is in our people who are following Jesus? The Spirit. Who do they have? Who helped the early church? Because everything was built on these 11 guys. It was the only plan. Jesus didn't have a backup. They were going to be the church. And yet you and I today exist because they spiritually carried out making disciples who make disciples. So I just want to remind us of that. But this feels super risky. And there are going to be people who go, why are you investing your time in these people? Why not just sit and hold our hands? I'll give money. It's hard because you guys have families, and we got to trust, is God going to supply for me? God, is there enough people to actually keep this church open and going? These are real things. But we're called to make disciples. And by the grace of God, it's happening. Jesus is in charge of his church, and he will continue to do it. But I think we need to decide, am I going to give people what they call for in this culture? Smoke machines, and again, I'm picking, but am I going to give them the experience that they want on a Sunday morning, or am I going to call them to be disciples? Am I going to sell them a product? Is the danger. And I'm not saying that the other smoke machines and a great band that you're giving a product. I'm just saying that that could be the easy recipe today for success. Or am I going to call people to lay down their lives and die? Jesus called people to lay down their lives and die. So let's keep doing that. So we're going to have lunch. Let me pray for lunch, or we'll go downstairs and we'll have lunch. But let me just say this, if you want to talk more about this, we did record some of this stuff so that people could maybe review it. We've got PDFs of that, but I'd love to look for future things, not so I can speak, but so that we could talk and say, like Joel's question. So we could talk about, okay, what do we do with discouragement when it comes to that in ministry? How do kids, this is an overstatement, I mean it as an overstatement. Kids wreck ministry. Having kids, don't have any kids, okay? Because your life would be so much easier. We started into something we call missional community so that we could live this kind of way. Guess what the thing was that made it incredibly difficult to do? Children. But what does God want us to do? What was the call when Adam and Eve were made, before sin existed? Multiply. Your kids are not the problem. We just have to figure out, okay, what does this look like? And how can I live differently in my world rather than asking my world to be different? We want to find ways to do this that are change your rhythms slightly and allow you to inject more meaning into the things that you're doing. Can I disciple when I ask people to come over and help me work on my house? Yeah. Can I disciple people while I put my kids to bed? I did. We had these 20-year-old guys hanging around my house, and I'd be like, hey, you need to learn how to read bedtime stories to children. Because I want my children to love you and look up to you, and I want you to show them what it looks like to follow Jesus, because you are 10, 15 years ahead of them, and they will listen to your voice more than they will listen to mine at times. My kids love those people. My kids learned incredibly important, how to handle it. So our families we just have to kind of learn, okay, well, what does this look like? So then what do I need to do? To figure these out, I need to sit around a table with a couple other people, and I need to take the 4. I'm going to be prayerful. We're going to look at God's word. We're going to say, hey, what does it look like to worship God in this area of my family, and what does it look like then to live a life of worship to God in them? The same thing with our wives. What if my wife sits there and goes, hey, it's nice that you want to do all of this, but what we really hate is this. How am I going to disciple her? These are the challenges. I'm not saying it's easy, I'm just saying it's work. And we've got 1.4 million people in the state of Maine, and the vast majority of them do not know Jesus. So we've got to saturate this state with the understanding of who Jesus is, with disciples who will actually be mini tabernacles. One of my favorite images. When you're a kingdom of priests, that means that you are a mini tabernacle sent to Walmart. And you bring the very presence of God in there, and when someone connects with you, you are the priest that can help them understand how they can be made right with God. Because what did a priest do? A priest offered sacrifices so that somebody could be made right with God. You're like this glowing bubble that walks into your work and into your hobbies and into your place. And the very presence of God goes with it.